My stepfather called me the placeholder once. Not to my face, of course. I overheard it through the crack of his home office door, the one he always left open just enough to make you think he wasn't hiding something. I was 17, standing in the hallway of a house that used to smell like my mama's cornbread, and I heard him say it plain as day into his phone. "Janelle, she's just the placeholder until Marcus is old enough to carry any of this." Marcus was 3. I was 17 with a 4.2 GPA, 2 varsity letters, and a scholarship application sitting on the kitchen counter that nobody had bothered to sign yet. I didn't say a word. I walked back to my room, shut the door softly, and I made myself a promise. I would become so undeniable that the word placeholder would never fit inside the same sentence as my name again. My name is Simone Adair. I'm 31 years old, and this is the story of how I found out my mama, a woman who barely spoke above a whisper, had been louder than any of them ever knew. Let me take you back to the beginning, because the beginning matters. My mama, Denise Adair, was a florist, not the grocery store bouquet kind, the real kind. Custom arrangements for weddings, estate events, corporate galas. She had a gift for seeing what a room needed before anyone else could feel it. She'd walk into an empty banquet hall, close her eyes for just a second, and then say, "Gardenias, tall stems, something that breathes." And she was always right. She built Adair Blooms from nothing. Just her, a rented van, and a wholesale account at the Atlanta flower market. By the time I was 8, she had a storefront in Buckhead and a client list that included 2 city council members and a country music label. But she worked herself ragged doing it. And when she got sick, the business was the last thing she wanted to let go of. Breast cancer, diagnosed when I was 14, gone when I was 16. 2 years that felt like 2 months. And then nothing but the sound of a house that had forgotten how to be a home. 6 months after we buried her, my daddy, who had never been in the picture much to begin with, didn't come back. And Gerald Webb, the man my mama had been seeing for about 2 years before she got sick, the man who had smiled at her funeral like he was relieved. Gerald moved in. He brought his cologne, his opinions, and his 3-year-old son from a previous relationship. And just like that, the house that smelled like my mama's cornbread started smelling like Gerald's cedar aftershave. I want to be fair here. Gerald wasn't cruel in the obvious ways. He didn't yell. He didn't hit. He was what I'd call deliberately small. He had a talent for making you feel like you were taking up just a little too much space, like your presence was an inconvenience being generously tolerated. He'd look over my report card and say, "Not bad," the way you'd say it about a stranger's kid you weren't impressed by. He'd listen to me talk about my plans and nod slowly with this look on his face like he was waiting for me to finish so he could think about something more important. And then there was the business. Because Gerald had ideas about Adair Blooms. He fancied himself a businessman. He'd worked in insurance for 12 years and genuinely believed that made him an expert in everything. Within 8 months of moving in, he had rebranded my mama's shop, changed the name to Webb and Conder Floral, hired his cousin to do the books, moved the storefront to a cheaper location in Decatur that got less foot traffic, and quietly had himself added to the business accounts. I found out about the accounts because I was the one who had been mailing my mama's quarterly statements since I was 15. I knew those numbers, and when I saw Gerald's name sitting next to my mama's, right there on the business registration documents he'd left open on the kitchen counter, I went very, very still. I was 18 by then, 2 weeks from leaving for Georgia State on a partial scholarship, and I understood in that moment that by the time I came back, there might not be anything left of my mama's life to come back to. So I did something I'd never done before. I called the number on a card I'd found tucked inside my mama's Bible. The card was for a woman named Yvonne Castleberry, estate attorney. I'd seen it so many times I'd memorized the number without meaning to. I called her on a Tuesday afternoon while Gerald was at his actual insurance job, and what Miss Castleberry told me made my hands go completely numb. She said, "Simone, your mother came to see me about 14 months before she passed. She was very thorough, very deliberate. She wanted to make sure certain things were protected. My mama had set up a trust. Adair Blooms, the real Adair Blooms, the name, the original client list, the intellectual property, the Buckhead storefront lease that still had 4 years left on it, all of it was held in a trust with my name on it, to be transferred in full on my 25th birthday, or earlier if I requested it through legal counsel. Gerald hadn't bought the business. He'd bought a copy, a shell. My mama had legally separated the core of what she built before she even told anyone how sick she was. And she had told nobody, not Gerald, not her sister, not even me, because she knew I was 16 and grieving, and she didn't want me carrying the weight of a secret that heavy when I should have been learning how to carry myself. She just left the card in her Bible, right next to Psalm 31, which starts with, "In you, Lord, I have taken refuge." My mama took refuge, and then she made sure I had one too. I didn't tell Gerald what I knew, not yet. I went to college. I studied business and horticulture. I interned at a floral design firm in Charlotte for 2 summers and worked every weekend event I could get my hands on. I kept my head down, I kept my grades up, and I stayed quiet. Because I had learned something from my mama's business, from all those years watching her walk into empty rooms and know exactly what was missing. Timing is everything. You don't put the flowers out before the room is ready. You wait, and then you walk in and you breathe. I turned 25 on a Thursday in late October. By Monday morning, I was sitting across from Ms. Castleberry in her office in Midtown Atlanta, with a cup of coffee going cold next to me, signing documents that transferred Adair Blooms in full to me, the Buckhead lease, the trademark. The original client database my mama had kept in a handwritten ledger I thought was lost. Ms. Castleberry had a copy. Of course she did. I called Gerald that afternoon, kept my voice completely even. I told him what had happened. I told him calmly, clearly, with no drama and no heat. I told him what he had thought he owned and what he had actually owned, and I told him the difference. There was a long silence on the line, and then he said, "Your mother was a piece of work." I said, "Yeah, she was the best kind." And I hung up. It wasn't an overnight turnaround. Nothing real ever is. I relaunched Adair Blooms over the course of about 11 months, moved back to the Buckhead location, reached out to every client from my mama's original list, one by one, and introduced myself. Most of them remembered her. A few of them cried when I called. One of her oldest clients, a woman named Patricia, who ran a vineyard wedding venue out in Dahlonega, told me she'd been waiting for someone from the Adair family to come back, said she'd been ordering from a bigger operation, but it had never felt right. "Your mama had a way," Patricia told me. "You walk in a room and I think you might have it too." I told her I'd be at her next event, and I was. Within 18 months, we had 12 staff, a second van, and a wait list for weekend bookings. I hired 2 young women from a local floral design program, paid them fairly, and taught them what my mama had taught me, that the work isn't about the flowers. It's about seeing what a room needs before anyone else can feel it. Gerald eventually lost the shell location in Decatur. Low foot traffic, poor management, no real vision. It closed on a rainy February Tuesday, and I only know that because Patricia sent me a text that said, "Saw the sign, you okay?" I was more than okay. A few months ago, I was setting up for a rehearsal dinner at a rooftop venue in Midtown. Tall gardenias, long stems, something that breathes. I was adjusting an arrangement by the window when I looked out at the city lights coming on below me, and I got this feeling I don't have a perfect word for. It wasn't triumph exactly. It wasn't relief. It was something quieter. It was the feeling of standing in a room that finally smelled like it was supposed to. My mama never got to see this version of the shop. She never got to see this version of me. And that is the part that still catches in my chest some mornings when I unlock the door and step inside, that she did all of this for me and never got to watch it unfold. But I think about what she must have felt in that attorney's office, sick and tired and scared, making sure the thing she'd built would survive her, making sure I would have something to come home to. She could have been angry. She could have spent that energy on a lot of things. Instead, she spent it on me. That's not a small thing. That is everything. If you're out there right now and someone has decided that you're the placeholder, the rough draft, the one that doesn't need to be taken seriously, I want you to hear this clearly. Your time is not wasted when you spend it becoming. The people who underestimate you are counting on you to believe them. Don't. And if your mama or your grandma or anyone who loved you quietly ever slipped something into your hands and said, "You'll understand this later," go back and look at it, because sometimes the people who loved you most were building you a floor before you even knew you'd need somewhere to stand. My mama left me a business card and a Bible. What she was really leaving me was the blueprint. Everything beautiful starts with structure, and I'm still building. If this story reminded you of someone who built something quietly for you, drop their name in the comments. I want to hear about them. And if you're in the middle of your own quiet season right now, share this with yourself as a reminder that the foundation is already there.